So I brought a tree, and I was gonna give kind of a talk about Black Hills spruce, and I think I will. I'll just kind of go over some of the culture and care and a little bit of what I know about the species. And if you have any questions, why don't you just ask me, just yell them out, and we can answer them to the best of my ability as I go along here, rather than waiting to the end or something like that. So this tree, this is a Black Hills spruce. Now this one, I put on this tree was collected 2 years ago. It was collected in the spring of 2014. So in June of 2014, this tree was collected. So it's had 2 seasons in a pot. And I estimated the age of this tree at 100 years. That's kind of how I got into bonsai. By the way, so I want to be finished here by about 10, right? Roughly 9:30. 10? Okay. So I want to kind of move along a little bit. So I estimated the age of this tree at about 100 years. And, you know, I'm always, I got into bonsai kind of through doing, I had some contracts with the Forest Service collecting tree sample cores of very ancient trees for drought research, for climate history research. And that's kind of what got me obsessed with old trees, which then kind of got me obsessed in bonsai. It's a long story, so I won't tell you the whole thing. But so when I started out, I was really obsessed with how old are these things, you know, and I spent a lot of time sampling trees and stuff. And then as time went on, I kind of stopped doing that, you know, because I don't know, I stopped doing it. But so all my age estimates are based on, you know, a few years of obsessive research counting tree rings, basically, on old trees like this. And sometimes nowadays, since it's been, you know, like a decade and a half since I last did that, I start lowering my age estimates. You know, I said this one's 100, and I remember when I was packing it up, I thought maybe it's not really 100. I don't know. Anyway, so I went in the closet, and I had made up this board of coarse specimens of trees that I'd sampled when I originally did it. So this is a Black Hills spruce core. This is the trunk, like right at the base, maybe an inch high. And I cut and counted this one. So this one was 138 years old.
Steady, but we can see it on the jumbotron. No, hold it in front of you, right? Let me find you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
You got it?
wait a second. Wow.
That's okay.
So usually what I would do with these, now this one I cut with a razor blade, and as I got more involved in it, I would cut them with a saw and then polish them with like 600 grit sandpaper, and then put oil on them and use like a little microscope. Usually about 20 power was best. If you got like 30 or 40 power, the rings start kind of blurring and stuff. So this one you can't see quite as clearly because it was just cut with a razor blade. Basically, you just want a smooth cut. But I'll just hand this around as I'm talking, and you can just kind of look at it. But the thing is, you know, they grow very, very slowly in specific sites. So let's just go into Black Hills spruce then. This is Picea glauca variety densata. Now anymore, it's just called white spruce. They kind of dropped the idea that Black Hills spruce is a separate species. In the nursery trade, it's still considered a separate species, but like the Forest Service now just calls it white spruce. And the spruces are so inbred and interrelated, you know, it's kind of hard to tell. I've gotten Engelmann spruce and stuff over in Wyoming that, you know, in areas where there's not supposed to be white spruce or anything. And when I bring them home and put them beside my Black Hills spruce, which is white spruce, I can't really tell them apart. And on the other hand, I've seen Engelmann spruce from further out west that look, they do have a noticeable difference. Like the twigs, instead of being kind of whitish, they'll be brown, and the needles kind of overlap a little bit more. Engelmann spruce from like southern Colorado have more of a blue needle, but Black Hills spruce also get that blue needle. And then I read just recently that they thought maybe Engelmann spruce was kind of a cross between white spruce and Colorado spruce. So they all kind of cross-pollinate, and there's a lot of, even in the Black Hills spruce in the Black Hills, there's a big variety of foliage types and stuff. You know, sometimes they look like different trees. But anyway, so essentially it's a white spruce.
Has any genetics been done on it, or nobody's?
Nobody cares about that. No.
Nobody
No. No.
You never know when government will spend great money on it.
Yeah. Right, so these are, anyway, these are like a zone 2 tree, so they're extremely cold hardy. One time I got, someone sent me a gardening magazine from Holland, and it had a list of outdoor trees that you could grow indoors, and it listed white spruce, like you could grow them indoors year-round. So I did try taking some little spruce seedlings and putting them in the house and growing them, and they lived. I can't say they thrived, but none of my house plants thrive because I forget they're there. So, you know, I don't know that I'm necessarily the best proof of whether that can be done or not. I was thinking maybe I should do it again, but I really am kind of terrible with houseplants. So, but possibly they could grow, you know, pretty far south. I know I've sent these down to, like, say, you know, St. Louis and Dallas and stuff, and they seem to do well there. And they'll do extremely well in the cold. The first year I started doing this, I made a little forest out of Black Hills spruce seedlings, and I was kind of curious as to what they would take, so I just left it out on the tabletop all winter, you know, 10 below zero, just in a little shallow tray. And when spring came, you know, they got brown needles, but they all lived. So, I mean, they're pretty cold hardy. One thing I have noticed with spruce is, you know, I do most of my tree work in the winter because the days are shorter, so I'm in the house for, you know, 12 hours at a time. I got nothing to do, so I go out and I get a tree and bring it in the house. And pines and junipers, I can bring them in and leave them inside for a couple days and work on them and put them back outside. It doesn't seem to make much of a difference. With the spruce, if I keep them in the house where it's like, you know, 60 degrees, 70 degrees for 3 or 4 days, and when I move them outside, it gets really cold again, they must start moving sap right away as soon as they warm up, because if they go out and it's bitterly cold, I mean like 15 below or something, but that's pretty normal. You know, the needles can just turn brown on them and drop off. And I've had that happen a couple different times where I moved a spruce tree into the house for, say, 3 or 4 days, moved it back out into the greenhouse, all the needles turn brown, drop off, but the buds stay green. And then when spring comes, poof, it starts growing again. So it's a little different than pines. You know, they're a little more sensitive to the cold, to the changes in temperature, I should say. I know one year we had a typical nasty weather event in July, and it got down in the mid-teens in the middle of July for 2 nights in a row, and it didn't seem to do anything to the pine trees, you know, but the spruce, all the new growth just dropped like that. So they were more sensitive to it. And these were trees outdoors, not bonsai trees. So for cultivation, generally I keep these where they get sun in the morning if I can, and then shade in the afternoon. And I think the thing about shade in the afternoon is I think the roots are prone to overheating. They like to have a cool root system. Like you'll see them growing right out in the field in complete full sun, but if they are, they're almost always right by a creek, so their feet are wet. In the Black Hills, they grow from about 3,000 feet elevation, and at that elevation, they're going to be pretty much all on north and east slopes. So out there, you'll go and, like, you know, if you're looking at a mountainside, one side of it facing north will be all spruce, the other side will be pine. The west face is pine, the east side spruce, just like that. All the valleys are like that. As you get higher and higher up, it turns to more and more spruce till, you know, for quite a ways it's mixed. And then when you get up at the very highest parts of the Black Hills, which are only 7,000 feet, it pretty much turns to all spruce. So they kind of like the cooler environment. And I try to keep them someplace where they get a shade in the afternoon, at least during the summer. They seem to like, they won't get long needles like ponderosa will or something like that. You don't really have to worry about that. So you can water them pretty much as you want to. I usually water mine just once a day. They do like humidity on the root system. So usually in the summertime, I'll always put moss on the pots for spruce. And typically what I find is if I take the moss off, a lot of times there's new roots growing right through the moss. It'll grow above the soil surface through the moss. And when I go out and collect young spruce seedlings, a lot of times they'll be growing just in these beds of moss, and the roots aren't even going into the ground. I mean, you can just pull them out of this big, thick mat of sphagnum moss, and the root system's all there. So they're pretty easy to transplant in that way. So the soil I've been using, this is why I wanted the board. I just recently the last couple years I switched my soil mix for spruce, and what I'm using now I think they like pretty well. So I've been using 3 parts pumice. That's the new hot soil component, and I had to have some. 3 parts lava rock. So the pumice I have to order by pallet from Oregon. And the lava rock I have to drive all the way down to Denver to get. And then 3 parts pea gravel, which my wife says is lava helper, because it's cheap and I can get it in town. And then I use 1/2 part horticultural, my pen is kind of dying out here, horticultural charcoal. And you can buy that, like Fertilome sells it for aquariums and stuff. And then 1 1/2 parts pine bark.
What was that last?
Pine bark. It's clearly written right here. I don't know if you can read that. So 1 1/2 parts pine bark. And this is the same exact mix I use for pines, except I don't put the extra half bit of pine bark in there. And then the big thing I also started doing finally after 20 years was screening my soil, which I resisted all my life, but I finally started doing it, and I do think it makes a big difference. But anyway, that's a good soil mix for just about any conifer. And then, you know, for stuff like spruce or fir, I add a little bit more bark. And then for junipers, I put in a little bit less of the organic material, but the same basic mix. So that works pretty good. Let's see, the last thing I was going to say maybe was I put the moss on there and let the tree have the moss on it in the summer. What I found is in the wintertime, that moss will absorb water and freeze and make like a shell over the top of the pot. So when I put them away, I take the moss off so that I can still water them, and the water will actually go into the pot. For winter care, you know, they're very cold hardy, but what I like to do is I have 4 greenhouses. They're all covered in white plastic. Summer and winter, I just leave white plastic on there, and they're basically cold frames. They keep it, you know, they're out of direct sun, and in the winter, the idea is it just keeps the temperature more stable. The white keeps it from overheating in there too much. Usually, in the past, I have not heated those greenhouses, and they get down to about 5 below zero, typically. The year before last, we had a huge hailstorm in the fall with hail, you know, like baseball-sized hail, and it just pretty much destroyed my greenhouses, and I didn't have time to fix them, so they're all full of holes, and it got down to like 20 below zero inside my greenhouses. And I did have some tree mortality, which, you know, that's always kind of an irritant to me. So this last year, I heated the greenhouses, 2 of them, up to 20 degrees. And, you know, I think I had probably the best winter survival of just about any year. But over the years, I really haven't heated them, and usually spruce just come through the winter fine at, you know, temperatures getting down to a little bit below zero for, you know, not really extended periods, but just a few nights at a time usually.
What kind of heat did you use for the greenhouse?
One has a big, you know, a 55,000 BTU kerosene heater for the big greenhouse, and the other ones, I got these ones from Farm Tech. And they got like 7 millimeter woven plastic cover on them, and then I put white plastic over that. And those, even though it's only a 1-layer cover, I just use a 5,000 watt electric heater, and it'll heat it right up to 20 and keep it warm all through the winter, which I don't quite understand how that works.
Do they like to be moist or drier?
In the winter or summer? All the time, a little bit moist. Yep. Yeah, so typically these grow, you know, lower elevations, almost specifically stream side, and then you get up higher, you find them on north and east slopes, and then until you finally get up higher, and they're everywhere. But down at lower elevations, they're almost always associated with a creek.
How far south do you think you'd be able to keep these alive? I mean, we're zone 7 here.
Oh, Memphis anyway. Yeah.
So that's pretty
And yeah, sure, yeah. But they have some winter in Memphis. I mean, it gets a little cool. Yeah, I don't know the total limit of it. Like I said, you know, they said they could grow indoors, so maybe they could grow down to Florida. I don't know. It'd be fun to find out. So this tree I sent, you know, I picked it out, you know, because it's the right size for a demo tree, and it was one I had, and it was healthy. Typically, I put them in a pot, and spruce start a little bit slower than pines do for me. So what I look for to tell if the tree's healthy or ready to work on is whether the new foliage opened and it made buds. And if I can see, you know, if the tree's planting for next year and made a good bud, then I'm pretty confident to work on it. If it's not too uncommon for spruce to just sit there in a pot for a year and not really do anything. And you'll dig around in the pot and it'll have roots, but it's not growing foliage, and then I just leave those ones alone. The foliage care is really easy, the management. After the tree is established, you just let the buds, they swell up, they get a shiny cap on the end of the bud, and then that cap starts to break apart, and it's like kind of a fuzzy green egg, and you just pluck all those buds off. And if you have kids, that'll give them something to do. That'll keep them busy for hours. So, I mean, yeah, I can bring tears to my boys' eyes just by mentioning bonsai. This is no lie. But and so then you pluck all the buds off, and say like about 3 to 4 weeks later, it'll make new buds, and those will start opening, and it'll make probably 3 buds for every one you plucked off. So then you've got twice as much work to go through, and you want to get rid of all the ones that are sticking straight up and sticking down, kind of thin those out, and then those ones come out and you pluck those, you know, at half length or, you know, 1/4 inch long, whatever you want. And you know, every year you have more buds to pluck. I mean, it's sort of a never-ending challenge. So this, you know, this is a kind of an interesting tree. I like the deadwood on it and stuff. I was looking at it today. I went out there and looked at it because I thought, what am I going to do with this tree? And when I started really looking at it, I thought, oh, this, you know, this is not as easy as I thought of a tree to work on. Trying to find the front, you know, from this end, the front, it's kind of narrow. So I'd kind of like to avoid that a little bit. I like the kind of twin trunk thing, but this seems to conflict. What's that?
Doesn't like to see branches cut off.
He's gonna make me cry.
Oh, no. So, no, that's what I was going to do. I thought, I'm going to get rid of this branch. I thought, well, I could use a front like somewhere over on this side where you have kind of a nice taped flare to the base. You know, you could use this side. And you know, this would be pretty easy to bend down and make a tree out of, but then this kind of conflicts with it. This is pretty flexible stuff. So I thought, well, I could get rid of this branch and I could just use this little one and this and make a tree. But I didn't really like that idea that much. You could also cut off the whole big part and just use this. That would be easy to do. But I kind of hate to waste that whole tree, so I decided I'm just going to keep all 3 of these branches. And I'm going to fake my way through it. You know, a lot of times you would like to think that you have like, or I would like to think that I have like a good idea what I'm doing when I start working on a tree. But to be honest, most of the time that's not really the truth. I mean, I kind of have a vague idea what I'm going to do, and then I just see what I can do and cut stuff off as I go. And, you know, I've seen Dave DeGroot and stuff do these wonderful drawings of things, of trees. He's got a perfect image in his mind of what he's going to create. And usually it's not like that for me. Usually when I'm done, I can do a drawing of the tree and I'll have a perfect image of what was created. So the first thing I'm going to do, what I like to do, is kind of clean up the deadwood a little bit. And so, you know, I think this gin's kind of long, so I'll just reduce this and peel this back. I can use this, my potato peeler thing. This is an X-Acto knife. They used to be really easy to get, but they're kind of hard to find now. But anyway, they'll take bark off, no problem.
Yeah, there's one of the bonsai places has them online.
Me?
Not just you. I didn't.
Yeah, I used to be able to walk into just about any hardware store and get them, and now I can't find them.
No, I bought some a little bit bigger loop. Same thing.
Yeah, well, they're pretty useful.
They work great.
All right, so what does anybody want me to do with this tree here? Make it beautiful. You know, I had a guy, this kid used to come to my house from Billings, Montana, and my wife would like want to run the other way every time she saw him pull up, because he would just come unexpectedly and he would sleep on our couch for like 4 days. And he was just obsessed with bonsai and trees and everything. But he was kind of odd because you couldn't really talk about anything but bonsai with him. But then he progressively wanted to do less and less to the trees, and then one day he came and he told me that he had gone beyond Kimura because he now understood that the trees should look exactly the way they were when you collected them. And I said, well, that's really not bonsai. I mean, it's cool, but it's not bonsai. He never came back. That was it. So my wife was happy that I mentioned that to him. And so then usually when I'm making these gins, you know, I just take pliers and rip the ends off a little bit. So it looks a little bit less man-made. I'm surprised you don't have like plastic on the floor for me here. Last time I was up at Bill's, I got yelled at.
You had a reputation for being extremely neat.
Yeah, imagine that. Yeah, so someone was mentioning, I think at the start of this, the ABS show that's going to be next year. So that's at Frederick Meyer Gardens in Grand Rapids, which is kind of a botanic sculpture art garden. It's a pretty cool place. I've gone to several different shows there. They have a pretty active group of bonsai people in Michigan. And I'm going to go to that one. It's a pretty fun thing. It's 9 hours for you guys, but it's about 22 for me, I think. No, I'm not going to use that. I just... I said I was surprised. So usually what I do when I'm going to work on these things is, like there's a lot of, you know, there's some of the branches have more full foliage on them, and then there's lots of little weedy ones. And if I have time, like I don't, you know, I'm not under any pressure, like now, I'll take some time and go through and really remove, thin everything out, get rid of all those kind of little ones, because spruce have even if they look pretty sparse, by the time you kind of shape them and put all the foliage together, there's usually so much foliage that you have way, way more than you want on them. So I don't usually worry too much about cutting off a lot of foliage. I mean, there's usually more than I want, no matter what. And like stuff like this on the bottom, I can usually get rid of all that without fear. Maybe this, that. So I looked at this tree and I thought, after looking at it, I thought I would probably keep everything. That's not maybe the best solution, but if you don't know what you're going to do, I mean, if you don't have some super clear vision, it doesn't hurt to keep things, because you can always remove them next year, or you can always break them while you're wiring it, and that'll make that decision for you. I mean, that's how a lot of trees are made, you know, by accident kind of. I mean, that's what caused this. You know, what I found with these trees, like, so I mark timber for the Forest Service, and I do timber cruising and stuff. And like, what I learned when we started was there was, you know, a forked tree that's a big negative. That's a big serious defect if you have a forked tree, because you just reduced your volume by half. So what we learned was that there was two kinds of forks: genetic forks, which go like this, just a kind of a gentle Y, and then there's damaged forks, which usually make a big U, like a porcupine killed the top. And that's what I've known, because that's what I was taught for years and years and years. And then I started thinking about that, because I realized it doesn't really make sense. You know, if a tree had a genetic propensity to fork, why would it wait till it's 80 years old and then do it once? You know, because every now and then you'll find a tree that forks right at the ground and forks, 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 forks. That's genetics. You know, these ones that go up, it's like a bug or something killed the top, you know. So I think all the forks basically are caused by damage, you know, some sort of insect thing. And when we were marking, you know, you were supposed to select damaged forks over genetic forks. They didn't want genetic forks left in the woods if you could weed them out. You know, they wanted you to weed out the defect basically in every timber stand when you're going through it. But I don't think there's such a thing as genetic forks, or they're very rare. I think it's all damage. So like when you see here and you see this, you know, something, probably a rodent chewed that and it killed the leader. This was probably the leader here, and then it split. 2 side branches took over, and then that same process happens again and again. And what I find with like ponderosa pine, junipers, all those things, is every time there's a sharp turn in the trunk, if you look carefully, there's a dead nub. So something killed the leader, a side branch took over and became the new leader, and then on it goes. All right, so where's all my wire? Here we go. So I think what I want to do now, like I like this branch here, and I wanted to use that. Here, I got some water here. I'll put this in there. This is my. So I'm going to color the deadwood here. I like this little branch, but it kind of goes the wrong way. So I was kind of playing with it, you know. It'd be nice to, this is, you know, this stuff's flexible, but it's really hard to bend something like this. When you have that kind of a sharp turn, you really risk breaking it. Like if I tried to bend against that, you really can't do that. I could take this probably and bend it around like that, but that looks even weirder than before. I could possibly pull it underneath. I was hoping to kind of avoid the loop look, because I want to keep this branch, I think. But I'm probably going to have some kind of a loop in there. And, you know, if it doesn't look good, we might have to get rid of that. But we'll just see. For now, I'm going to start. So I was going to color the deadwood. I brought this, my special non-lime sulfur deadwood coloring stuff that is, yeah, this is patented, but I'm going to tell you my secret. So my wife, you know, the first time I brought a tree into the house, she's a very sweet lady, and I was down there and I lime sulfured it, and she said, "Did the toilet overflow? What's happening here?" You know, because like where I work on trees, our bedroom is like the next room over, you know. And so she didn't like that as much as I thought she would, even though it's, you know, artistic and everything. And that happened again and again and again, because usually I do trees inside in the wintertime. So eventually I started using paint, just acrylic paint and water. And that works fine. And actually it's cool, because you can take acrylic paint and you can put any color you want in, like blue, green, whatever. I did a pair of spruce, and I split the trunks with a trunk splitter and made them so both trunks kind of opened up. And then I made the gin on the inside, and I wrapped the trees so one went through the other, and they came up like this. It's kind of a literati thing. And I did the deadwood on the inside blue, just because I was screwing around. There was no real reason for it. And I showed that tree at the show in Chicago one year, because I thought it was looking pretty good. And I was just amazed how many theories people came up with for why that was blue, you know, that well, it like represented a waterfall, and you know, what could you say? But yeah, you're right. That's exactly what it is. But you can do anything you want. There's no reason why deadwood has to be gray or white or anything else. I used to think that white-looking deadwood was artificial. You know, because deadwood typically tends to be gray, but a few years ago we were working in this area marking pine trees, and the deadwood on all of them was just bone white. And I don't know, it must have been something in the soil there, maybe calcium or something. There it was on a limestone outcrop where most of these trees were. But you know, I hadn't seen too many trees in the woods that had like snow white deadwood, but I finally found some. I know when I find junipers, and that, you know, their dead wood can have, you know, purple and blue and orange and everything else in it, along with the, you know, the gray and the black that is more common. But this stuff is just white. So what I was going to say was, this is as good, I think it's better than using like lime sulfur, because it doesn't smell. If I spill the whole bottle on here, I'm not going to kill the tree. You know, it's non-toxic, and it's real easy to mix up, and it's real easy to color any tone you want. So this is Zinsser Bullseye Primer. You ever heard of that? It's like you can, you know, you paint your wall with it. It kills mold. So it's got a fungicide in it, just like lime sulfur does. And I mix it 1 part of that with 5 parts water, and that's the basic thing. And then if I want it to be whiter, I'll use less water. And if I want it,
Acrylic or the shellac base?
oh, the acrylic, yeah, the stuff you can clean up with water. And it's, you know, it's pretty, I like it because it's easy to clean up, and it actually ends up looking real natural after it dries, and, you know, it's outside for a day or two. It kind of, you can't really tell that it's, it doesn't look as glaring as lime sulfur can. Now this paintbrush is probably a little bit big for getting some of the fine stuff here. But anyway, I would suggest this stuff. It works pretty well. So years ago, they had Kimura came to Atlanta, and he had a spruce that he worked on there, a great big Black Hills spruce. And he also had a juniper, and he had a pine, a big ponderosa pine. On the juniper and the pine, he made the deadwood white, snow white. On the spruce, he didn't color the deadwood at all. He left it real dark gray. And so I asked him, why did you not color the deadwood on the spruce? And his answer was, he looked at me like I was an idiot. So I don't know why he didn't do that, but but I have like spruces at home, and some of them I color the deadwood on, and some I don't. And then if someone says, why isn't that one colored, I can say, well, Kimura didn't do his, so I don't have to do it either. But you know, I kind of like the whitish look, or make it at least stand out a little bit. And so you guys are going to raffle this tree, right? Okay, so whoever gets the tree gets this whole bottle of stuff, because I don't really want to take it back home with me. You know, it's worth about 28 cents or something.
They let you on a plane with it?
Yep. No, I mailed this. No, they wouldn't let me on a plane. Nope. Nope. I mailed it. I forgot I even sent it. Jim's like, what is this? I was like, what is that? Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Oh, that was my mail from last week. Sorry about that.
Yep. Okay, well, that's enough for now. So I'm probably wasting too much time talking, so now we got to get a little bit more serious and start cutting some stuff. Huh? I live on stress. I've got to have it. Here we go. Here we go. So I want to use probably number 10 wire for this branch, and then probably 8 for this. See, so what I thought was maybe I could pull this one down here. This is these spruce, all these conifers from out west, almost all of them, are very flexible. Now, like, so this can come down and make kind of a side branch, but I want that, I want to keep both branches. For nothing else, just because this could be useful in the future if, like, say I snap this or something when I'm doing that. The only western conifer that I've worked on that is not flexible is Douglas fir, and those are not flexible really at all. They're kind of scary. But all the other ones are real flexible like that. Like, I thought about maybe I should get some raffia, but you know, that would just be like showing off and probably waste a lot more time than I'm going to have. So. So this part here is fairly stiff. So what I was saying was these things are really, really flexible, like, you know, like soda straw flexible. Where they're not flexible, though, is the joint. Like I could easily break this thing right here by pulling these two apart. So the branch, the wood itself is pretty flexible, but every crotch, every branch crotch is the weak part, and that's what you've got to look out for. And so when I'm bending stuff, I usually use one hand to support underneath those crotches and stuff to make sure that, you know, I'm not going to get out of control and do something I regret. So with this, it's kind of, you know, I don't really know if you should bend the branch as you're wiring it or not. People say different things. A lot of times I do bend it if I think it's kind of like, this is flexible, but it's very springy. And when you go over it, you can kind of work the wire back and forth to set the copper. And then make sure the angles are long, not short. A lot of times what I see when people take workshops is they'll put the angles almost like, you know, parallel to the branch. So that's kind of holding. And then, you know, here, if I want to bend it, though, I got to keep my thumbs underneath it so that, you know, so that to protect it. And sometimes if you just hold it for a little bit, you know, then it'll kind of relax in place. And that's probably going to be far enough for this wire. Jim said I could have all the wire that went on the tree for free, but he's charging me for all the extra pieces, so I have to keep it.
We can take that.
I have days when I'm wiring trees. I have either short wire days or long wire days. And if I'm feeling confident, I usually have too much extra wire at the end of the branch. If I'm kind of nervous and cheap, I never cut enough, and I'm always like 3 inches short. So I definitely prefer to have a little extra. I might use some 10. I think this is very flexible. So I think this is number 12 wire here, copper, and I'm going to use it. So, you know, there's a big thing. When I first started, you know, everyone swore to God that copper wire was the best stuff ever made for working on bonsai. And, you know, my experience was I liked using aluminum because it was really soft and easy to use, and it was cheaper. But eventually, I switched to using copper wire because in the magazines, they always use copper wire, and I wanted my trees to look professional, you know. So you could say it was a marketing thing, really. And after I used copper wire for a while, I started really liking it. And so then for a while I became like a copper snob, you know, and I didn't want to use aluminum. But when you go to workshops and stuff, they almost always give you aluminum wire to use. So I was forced to use back into using aluminum wire. And now, you know, copper is stronger probably. And with conifers, it has to stay on there longer, and aluminum starts looking really crappy after a couple months in the sun. You know, that fake oxidation stuff they put on there just kind of fades off, and it gets real silvery white. So I usually use copper on conifers, but a lot of times I'll go ahead and use aluminum on the fine branches because it is so soft. So since I'm going to make a loop here, you know, which is, I don't know, kind of a no-no, I think, I'm going to kind of pull it back a little bit in front and kind of, so it won't be just kind of one loop, it'll be, make it more interesting. And I don't know if you heard that little crack there. Okay, well, turn the mic down. Where's, so I did put a little crack right there where there was a little bit of dead wood. Normally that's not something I really worry about. The only thing I worry about when that happens, you know, if I break it bad enough that it's dangling, that's actually a problem. But when you make a little crack, what I worry about is, you know, just that it's going to dry out. So usually I'll gob some of that stuff over there. And typically, there's no consequences. The branch just keeps growing. Not that it's guaranteed there's no consequences, but usually there's none. So probably maybe I don't want to push that much further though, since I already can feel it cracking. And so, you know, what I'm doing here is I'm following your basic bonsai triangle guideline, you know. Make the tree into a triangle. I don't know if you guys ever saw that in a book. Right, so if you don't know what to do, do that. That's, it's, you know, it's good advice. So I'm pulling this down. This will be like a little sub crown here, and then we got this thing here. I'll probably pull this to the back. And I think I'm going to use some more of this number 12 wire here. And about this much. Where's my wire cutters? Here they are. So the big thing with wiring is, you know, that it's always anchored. My friend says, so it has a fulcrum. So it has a fulcrum. So the wire can do its job. It has to be attached to the trunk correctly. And one thing I notice, people that, if they haven't wired a bunch of trees, when they start wiring, they typically will just like wire this branch and I'll start right here and go to the end, and then, you know, they have no control because that isn't connected to the rest of it. So that's a kind of a big thing to remember. Once you got it, you won't ever not have it. I like spruce because they have these kind of flat pads. Like with pines, you know, you always want to turn the buds up to the sun. And they don't, you know, they can be pretty far out of line and stuff, so there's a lot of wiring of the tips and everything. With spruce, if you're in a kind of a hurry, you can do kind of a remedial wiring job just like this and just lay it out like a hand. And, you know, it can, that'll work for a while. Here it is. Yep. And then what I really try to cut off is when I see, you know, spruce tend to get these little like sucker branches that you can see, like just like junipers do too. It's kind of a safety thing for the tree growing in a stressful condition, but it'll make these little suckers coming out of the crotches of the other branches. And I pretty much cut those off all the time because they just kind of drain strength from the main branch that you want to support. And then stuff that's like sticking up, you know, get rid of that. So now I got this thing. And so, so I guess I didn't really discuss my front because I'm not a big front guy. You know, trees are just trees. They do have a front, obviously, but I was kind of thinking in this quarter here somewhere is where I was looking at the front. And the reason for that was just because I didn't like any of the other ones, really. There wasn't. I would use the back side of it, but I like the deadwood on this side, so I wanted to do something with that deadwood. So.
Andy, on that turntable has a drawer with wedges, if that will help you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Pull this down. And let's see, here's this stuff. So I'm going to use a little bit lighter wire here on this one. So what I usually cut off are those sucker branches, weak branches, and then duplicates. You find a lot of branches that basically are doing the same thing as another branch. You know, you have branches in the same position, and I usually weed those out. And then when that's all done, I can look at the rest of it and decide if there's more that needs to go or whatever. Like here, you know, just to make it easy, I can get rid of these ones that are coming off the top. And any of these that are kind of clogging up the...
I'm speaking up a little for the old geezers.
Oh. What I said! Is my microphone, should I move it over different?
No, there's no amplifier, it's just for the video.
Oh. All right, and now we're going to go to number 16. This is the wire I use for most small branches.
When you put it into that pot, did you find any interesting roots that might be exposed in the future?
No. These spruce trees always make a really thick black muck around the root pad. It's really, really thick. It's almost like tar or something, and I'm not sure exactly why that is, but they all do it. So usually when I get them out, like with pines and junipers, I can actually clean out the root system, and if I want to, I can bare root it and get it just to open roots. But with spruce, they tend to have these like a super thick mat of roots, but it's in like this kind of tarry black decomposed needles. I mean, I'm not sure what it is because it's not really a native type soil. But so usually what I end up doing with that is just trying to poke holes through it and open it up some and not really rip it apart because I don't want to destroy the roots that are in there. And then it comes apart, you know, over time, but kind of slowly, really. So now I'll do the crown here for this part.
Do you have to treat them with mycorrhizae or anything?
No, not at all. Nope. They've all got it, you know. In fact, I was having trouble with limber pines, getting them to grow, and I started thinking about that. Where they come from over in Wyoming, it's just straight like gravel and really, really dry. And I thought, I never see mycorrhizae on the limber pines. On the ponderosas, they always have it. I mean, you pot them and they have this yellow, it's either yellow or white on the bottom of the root ball. So what I started doing was taking my ponderosas and taking all that muck off and put it in a bucket and then stir it around and then pot the limber pines later and dump the mycorrhizae on them and see if that would improve survival. You're supposed to go, well, did it improve survival?
I thought that did. Well, what happened?
Those results are not known. I think it improved it a little bit, but not as much as I was hoping. I think white pines in general are just tougher to do, tougher to transplant. For the root system's different, you know. It seems to me like with what I do, the root system is pretty much everything, you know. And white pines have got a really, at least the ones when we collect them, they got a really thick, woody type of a root system with not as much hair roots and stuff.
That makes them less prone to be potted, or?
Just makes it harder for them to get started, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why, but I've talked to, like, I think one of the most knowledgeable bonsai people that I've met. I mean, there's a lot of them. I think they're all more knowledgeable than me, but David DeGroot seems really, really knowledgeable, and he seems to know, I think, a lot of stuff. And and he said like when he was doing the Weyerhaeuser collection, they always had trouble with white pines, as far as repotting them. Just he said, I don't know what the deal is; they're just tricky. And I certainly find that when we're trying to do like limber pine and stuff, the survival is not as good. Ponderosa pine, I can get 95% or more survival. These things probably 90%. Limber pine, some years I only get, like, I think this year, I hate to admit this, but I probably got 25%. Why is that? I don't know. Last year I did actually really good with them, but they're just touchy. Once they're established in a pot, you can repot them. I don't have a problem with that. But the first time around,
Do you change your
soil mix.
Yeah, because they're from say more gravelly areas.
I put them in the same stuff as I do the junipers, so a little bit less organic. I don't know. There's just, that's probably what makes bonsai interesting, is there's so much to know that isn't really known.
I wonder if the gravel thing has a pH thing associated with it.
Probably.
That's not in a prepared soil.
Well, if you scientists would get on the stick and figure that out for me,
Bring this soil.
that would be okay. Yeah, it could be. So limber pines grow usually on granitic soils, outcrops, which should be acidic. I find them two places, either out in the desert or way, way, way up high, like at 12,000 feet. They're like a tree line tree, which seem like totally different environments to me. The one's extremely dry, the other's wet. But I don't know. All right, so that looks like a crown there, I think.
It's a baby apex.
Yeah, subapex. And I just want to do these last two ones, then we'll move on to the big one.
Well, as a moment of silence, I forgot one thing to announce. Joe Lesnick has 2 palm trees, Joe?
I have 2 trees that are too big for me to keep anymore. I don't have really indoor facilities. I have a 50-year-old ponytail palm. It's got a base that holds the water, and these fronds that are like a pony's tail, very, very long. It's probably about 5 or 6 feet tall, and probably about 3.5, 4 feet in diameter. Probably weighs about 60, 70 pounds. I'm just looking to find a good home for it. I also have a, not as old, a sago palm or a cycade. That's probably almost as big. The fronds just come out. Once a year in the springtime, it sets its fronds for the year. It just comes out like a palm. And it's just very big and awkward to take care of. And like I said, I don't have a lot of space for it. If someone's got a greenhouse, can winter them, and wants to take on a couple of big plants, just let me know. Be happy to work with you. I'm just looking for a good home for him. Thank you.
I don't have the nerve to do what you do, Andy. I wouldn't have the nerve to spend a brain like that in my life, even wire.
I think, not that I'm being, well, I probably am being cavalier, but I've killed more bonsai trees than cholera. Just because I've collected so many. So, you could use that little part as a tree just by itself. And it's pretty easy to lay those spruce out into kind of a flowing thing like that. And it's, that didn't take like any real designing. I mean, I just kind of bent it down and did that. But the confusing part, or the interesting part, is what to do with this part. I was thinking I could perhaps pull it forward so that the apex is coming more towards you. I don't know if that would look great or not. Probably not. This part can easily, what's that? Oh. This part can go down. Maybe the thing to do would be to pull this part up a little bit more. That might work a little bit better. So one thing when you're going to, like, you know, bend something like this, it's just like kind of loosening up for going running or something. You don't just take off sprinting, you know. So you want to just kind of play with it a little bit. Yeah, just kind of.
Yoshimura used to wet it and spray it first.
He would do what?
Spray it. That's the Yoshimura.
With water, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, you kind of. Harold calls this tree chiropractic. But that helps a lot. What I found, like with Doug fir, old Doug fir are so brittle, you can use the raffia, the backing wires, and more raffia and wire, and it'll still just come apart in your hand with no crack or anything. It'll just come right off of there. They're extremely brittle. But what I found was if you wire them, pull it down until it starts to feel tight, and then stop, and then wait like 5 minutes, and then pull it down again and stop. Wait 5 minutes. You actually can bend them pretty far, but you can't do it fast. You know, you got to be really, really patient. And you know, they're so. I always fool myself and think I'm going slow enough, and usually they have to slap me around a little bit to convince me to slow down even more. So I think I'm going to try and pull this one up a little bit and see if that'll give us some option to work. I'll probably have to use heavier wire for that. Now I don't really have a place for this branch, but I'm going to leave it on there for now, just to see if maybe I will find a place for it. But I can't really think of any reason to keep it at the moment. So this part, like down here, you could bend all this too, but this is pretty rigid, and with the you know, the tree in the pot, you would need like really a branch, you know, one of those lever things to bend that. So that's not something we're going to do tonight. There we go. So this is now number 6 copper wire, a little bit heavier. Now normally, okay, so I shouldn't say this because I guess you could just put in situations sometimes, but all conifers, the cambium rotates as it goes up the tree. They twist a little bit, like on a tree that's growing in good site, lots of moisture and stuff. It's virtually straight, but if you cut it, you lay the log down and you take the bark off, you can see the cambium rotates just a little bit. All conifers rotate to the right. That's counterclockwise. And like the more stressed they are, the more wind pressure they've had on them, or the more drought pressure, the tighter the rotation will be. Like a lot of the old logs out in the hills have been laying on the ground. They just look twisted like a piece of rope. And they always go to the right, except every now and then you'll find one, like 1 out of 1,000 goes to the left. But so anyway, when I wire, I try to remember to go around the trunk in that same direction, you know, not to girdle the cambium. But like, so I started out here, I did the right direction, and of course this is going the wrong direction. But this is a theory of mine. I haven't actually noticed any real effect because of it.
Trees below the equator, do they go the other way?
You know, everybody asks me that, like toilet water and stuff. I don't know. It's possible. So.
It could have something to do with the water, yeah.
Okay, I'll start it like here. Well, one guy, you ever hear of Jerry Vislick, an old Vislick? Yeah, he told me it was because of You know how organic molecules are left and right-handed and stuff? So he thought it was due to that. But he was also telling me that the rabbit wants to be eaten by the fox, and that's why he's standing there, so I don't know. I wonder where he is. I used to see him quite often. But. All right, so I wanted to pull this up. This part will go down easily. I just want to kind of raise this part. And usually you're supposed to make bonsai trees shorter, but you know, that may not always be the get you what you want.
Well, I would imagine that's what's in it.
So when I get to here, I'm just going to stop and trim that end.
Great time, how'd you know the truth?
The one thing you got to worry about when you're using like heavier wire, like number 6, is that the force required to bend the wire is stronger than the branch. So the risk of breakage starts going up and up and up. And you just have to pay a little bit more attention. And then especially when you have heavy wire and then it merges with light wire, right there where they, you know, this will hold rigid and that'll bend real sharp. So that's another place that's a potential weak spot. You need to just be paying attention.
Did you ever see the white spruce get like a lichen on it that hurts the tree?
Not where I live, I haven't, but it's pretty dry. I know they get probably like red spider mites and all the other things. So a lichen like what? What did it look like?
Well, I have, you know, these trees that I've had in a pot for like 20 years. It's a white spruce forest. And it got, I don't know if it's from the moss. You know, I didn't take the moss off in the winter because they really can take the cold. So I left the moss on. It might have been the moss that climbed up on the tree. It's kind of a bluey green, kind of a lichen moss.
Does it look like mold or something, or did?
It's a little moldy.
Huh.
You know, I left it on there for a few years. It didn't seem to bother. Then I noticed that the branches that had that were not doing so hot. So then I took a toothbrush and I started taking it off a little bit and it seemed to be doing better.
Huh, you know, okay, so now that you mention it, what I've noticed is like on Colorado spruce, which are a very drought-resistant dry land spruce, what I do see sometimes is something like that. They'll get this kind of fuzzy stuff on the needles, and then those branches kind of slowly die back. That could be the same thing, and I never did really figure out what that was. I just take them and move them into more light, and it seems like it'll correct itself if you get it out of that, you know, it's usually like it's too wet. Well, if the branches are dying. So what I'm thinking is that this one here, up here, the taller one will be the crown. And we'll just have to see how the rest of this goes. But what I want to do is get this one laid down. I don't know if it's really good for it. Usually it doesn't harm it.
I thought it was some kind of mycorrhizal, you know, I thought it was good at first, but then I noticed, it seemed to be something like, into the branch, and I was like, this isn't so good. I don't have it on other trees, I just had it on that, and I thought it might be a moisture, right.
Break up like stones.
It used to have,
Yeah.
always lived in, kind of partial shade.
Yeah.
behind me, that had, the big sycamores that had, kind of dappled,
So here again, to bend this one down, I want to just keep my hand under that crotch there so I don't split it. This wire may not be quite heavy enough. This is kind of springy, but we'll see.
The branches look very flexible, like they'll just go back out of shape when you take the wire off.
Usually not. But the new growth will go up, you know. So what I do usually with these spruce, actually that's a good question, is usually I leave the wire on for about 2 years, a little bit less than with pines, 2 or 3, depending on how fast the tree's growing. The thing is with spruces is, like you'll start to see it like kind of swelling up to make wire marks. Man, it'll do it just like that all of a sudden. You know, I don't think I've had in 20 years like one pine ever do that. Spruce will do it quickly. If you start to see it do it, you better take the wire off. And usually it's always the top of the tree that does it.
I've got a Scots pine that'll do that to me every year, every late summer. Its branches swell.
Yeah, huh.
Then I take the wire off.
Would you ever tie any of that down to the pot?
Would I or do I or what?
Yeah, yeah, is that a possibility?
Sure.
Is that a good idea?
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Tie some of it down.
Oh, you did, God.
Yeah, I tie them down when I have to. You know, I guess I'm, what would you say the word is?
Sometimes, yes, but not today.
Right, unless you really want me to, I'll do it, but,
I want you to do whatever you want.
okay, I don't want to tie it down to the pot. I try, so what I like to do is have the tree so that it can be, now wait a minute, okay, so, all right, I got wire going this way. What I want to do is follow this wire here so that I can, so I just better put it right on here so it doubles that wire, because that's the one I'm wanting to connect with. I like to have the trees so that if I move them from the pot, they're going to stay wired. I don't have to like reconnect a bunch of stuff. So as much as I can, I'll connect the tree to itself. You know, sometimes I'll put a screw in the side of the pot and do that. But I'm more likely to like make a loop in the wire and put a guy wire to another part of the tree. Sometimes that doesn't work, but I get kind of fussy about how the wire looks. So So here I'm going to have to cross a wire. That's okay. Now this piece I could just get rid of, but I was thinking it might be nice to use that to kind of add some depth to the crown of the tree to kind of back that up. So I'm going to save it and see what I can do with it when we get to that point.
How often do you have to give them fertilizer?
Spruce like fertilizer, so I'm not nearly as good and consistent at that as I should be. So what I do is I buy these, they're nursery trade, they're just containerized, they're not organic, because we got, 86 kinds of rodents around our house. So it seems like anytime I put organic stuff in there, I get even more wildlife in my trees than normal. So I leave the organic stuff out, but you know, it's just kind of slow release, almost like Osmocote, only it's cheaper. And I use that. I put that in all the pots in the spring, and then sometime in midsummer I'll do it. And then I like to use Dynagrow fertilizer. I think their fertilizer is pretty good. They're liquid fertilizer, but a lot of times I just don't have time to get to that, so that's kind of hit or miss for me.
I'm afraid to ask, how many trees do you have?
You know, so for a bonsai guy, not that many, but 400 or 500, I don't know, you know.
Water them every day,
You
right?
said I can't have one more plant.
He probably has a little more land.
Okay, that is a lot of trees, but not for a bonsai guy. I mean, I get it from, I think it's A.M. Leonard Company, and it's, oh man, I forget what it's called, but it's in their nursery catalog. And it's just these pellets you put on there, and they're slow release, they dissolve. You put them on the surface, you know, just like any of those kind of fertilizers, and they,
Under their name, right?
yeah, yep. If you go to their, get their catalog or whatever. And they have different ones, but I use the one that's for containerized plants.
So you're telling me that you did 400 or 500 trees in your room next to your bedroom? And you still live in? Really? And you don't stutter?
No. No, 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 no. I didn't say that.
In the wintertime. Outdoors, and he has acres and acres and acres.
So like I got really obsessed with old trees because my wife found the oldest known pine in the Black Hills. And I didn't realize that I was, you know, I'm so laid back, I'm not competitive at all, but I spent the next like 8 months trying to find an older one. And I found like a juniper that was 900 and some years old. And a lot of the pines, what I found, that's how I got a contract with the Forest Research Center, was they wanted old trees for climate history studies. But anyway, while I was becoming obsessed with that and spending all my time out drilling trees and counting ages, how I got into bonsai was, normally in the forest, they say 15 years for a tree to get 4.5 feet tall, and that's just a standard they use in all their computer programs, because you sample the trees at 4.5 feet. It's called DBH, and whatever age you get, the computer just throws in 15 years, because that's the forest average to reach that height. So I thought these trees, these old trees, it took me months to figure this out, that all the old ones were not great big trees. They were trees that were kind of up on these rock outcrops, and they were smaller than average, not bigger. So I sampled some little seedlings, and I thought maybe they'd be 30 or 40 years instead of 15, and they were like 150. And so I was just like, that just blew me away. I just didn't realize that that's what was going on up there. And I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here in the spring, because I was a tree planter for 5 years. 1.3 million trees with this arm right here, by hand. But anyway, huh?
How old were they when you were planting?
Oh, like a year. They're little, tiny little things, yeah. Yeah, small. So I lost my train of thought. Anyway, I thought I'd go up there in the spring and I'd dig up one of these old trees and I'd put it in a bucket on my porch, and I'd have a 100-year-old pine on my porch, and no one would believe me. And I just, you know, that's as far as my thought process went. And I was telling my wife about that, and then one day she comes back from Kmart, and she's got like a little $10 juniper, you know, procumbens, and she gave it to me. And like ding, 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 you know, the bells. Yeah, I was just like, bonsai, that's what that is. That would be so cool. And so, you know, within like 6 weeks, we're pretty much on the edge of divorce, because the house is completely filled with trees. You can't sit down anywhere. Right. Well, I told her that. I said, yeah.
And then he spent a lot of time with trees soon after that.
Well, so what happened was, though, that first tree that she got me, you know, I sat there, it had a little book with it, a little instruction book, and it said, this is an outdoor plant and must, you know, needs the cold of winter and all that. And so I put it out on the porch, you know, And so I'm sitting there about an hour later, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, holy crap, you know, that thing came from a 70-degree Kmart, and it's like 5 degrees outside. That can't be right. So I went out and got it, and it was already dead, you know. So I hold the record, I think, for getting rid of my first bonsai the fastest. But I was hooked like immediately then. And I didn't really realize I was like obsessive compulsive till that happened. So I'm kind of doing the same thing as I did with that other one, you know, kind of making like a little sub-crown here. And this will be the crown. And we'll see how she goes from there. I want to get rid of some of these extra things. And probably keep, the buds look good on all these, so I'll just keep the one more from the side. And you just go, you know, bigger branches get bigger wire, and you just progressively use smaller and smaller wire. What I'd like to do that they never do, they have all these bonsai contests, you know, wiring, styling contests, like the New Talent contest, and Bill used to have contests, and it would be cool if they could do one that was like blindfolded, you know, and you were, well, so I think, you know, this is somewhat methodical in a way. It doesn't have to be, but, you know, if you were allowed to have a spotter, but you had to wear a blindfold, that would be kind of fun. I'd like to see how that came out.
The instructions are in Braille.
Yeah, I can't read Braille, but
And you say that wire will stay on there 2 or 3 years?
yeah, yep. Yeah, I know. See, like everyone has around here has probably lots of maples and stuff like that that grow really quick, and these things grow relatively slowly.
December, and then I'm looking at it, and I'll just look at it. Fight the wires biting, and I'm like,
At least you know it's good health.
yeah, well, I guess it was growing, so I guess it's a good thing, but I'm like,
Okay, so I'm going to cut off this branch. It's really long.
flowers anyway. So I'll have to wire it again, I'm waiting until the branches to finish thickening.
Then I got more stuff down here to think about. I think I want to get the crown. Usually I like to do a tree like from the bottom to the top and just kind of work my way up. That's why I think that maybe you could do it blindfolded, because you know, it's kind of progressive. I like to start at the bottom and just work to the top of the tree and see what happens. Not always with a really good plan, sometimes. So this one, you know, this is a little bit touchy here, moving this around to the front. I just got to be careful. And of course the crown is pretty important. You don't really want to mess that up if you can avoid that. But you can, the wire's going the right way. You can rotate these.
They swivel the whole thing around.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Okay, and then I'll get some wire for those two. So, you know, when you do bonsai, they always have these demos like this where you wire a tree. And, you know, I've really come to learn after doing this for a while that this is like the smallest part of the whole thing, you know. I mean, it's sort of a fun part. I like to shape trees, but, you know, the growing them and the year-to-year, year-over-year care is really where it's at, I think, as far as bonsai. If you can't keep it healthy or you can't keep it alive, it won't look, doesn't matter, you know, how good. I tell everybody this because I'm going to do it. I'm just so behind on everything. I was going to do it before I came here. Was get a T-shirt that says "Traveling Bonsai Master." Before it's brown, I'm out of town. But but I'm going to get one. I just haven't done it yet. But
It'll cut down on your work.
Yeah, well, you know, like this whole summer I had the wrong email address on my website, and I thought that's good. It just keeps things at the level I can handle here. Because only people that really, really want to get a hold of me can do it. And I was just busy as hell. Yeah, that's true.
He was burning up the emails between us. Did you hear back from him? Did you hear back from him? I haven't heard back from him.
Yeah.
Same thing.
You know, those tom-toms work in the forest.
I have a like a curse, a technology curse on me or something. I don't know. Okay, so somehow that, of course, that, you know, we're not going to say that's our crown yet, but it's going to be the crown. I think what we want to do is pull this down further. It's a pretty nice branch. I have so many good branches here, I kind of hate to cut them all off, but if you can't use them, may as well.
Do you ever use Alberta spruce?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are those, how long do you wire an Alberta spruce and leave the wires on?
Well, so like typically, you know, if you get an Alberta spruce, you're going to get it at a garden center. So it's like a 3 to 8 year old tree, something like that. So it's going to grow way faster than this one. It's basically the same species, but it's just a kind of a variant. So probably maybe a year or something. I mean, you know, basically what I start looking for is when the wire's biting in, it's time to take it off. And if it's not biting in yet, I just leave it on. With pines, I don't really ever have to worry about that. You know, it can stay on there for several years, no problem. With spruce, I have to pay more attention.
I'd like to know why mine went crazy and started thickening his branches, and I had to take them off after 8 months.
After 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah, see, you guys have, like when I was walking around today looking at all the different trees in people's yards, you got, I mean, you can grow so much stuff here that, you know, I mean, where I live, there's some cool old trees, but actually what would you say, the diversity of the forest is pretty thin, you know. There's just a lot of things that won't survive there.
This was Scott's plant, so it's pretty cool.
So perhaps with moving this as south as it is now going to live, it might not hold for 2 or 3 years.
Perhaps, yeah. Yep, you just have to watch it and see if the wire starts cutting in or not, yeah. Yeah, and that's really a big thing too, that, you know, whatever I say, I mean, all my knowledge is based on where I live, you know, so it's not necessarily going to apply here.
We're going to be in a much milder climate here.
Yeah,
It's going to
yep.
be almost like tropical for it.
Yeah, I don't think the heat will bother it at all. I think it'll probably grow well here, but it might grow a lot faster than they do at home.
Well, I mean, if it doesn't have as low a temperature to recover from, maybe it starts a little earlier or whatever. but
Probably.
that's what-
Longer growing.
Longer growing season.
Yeah, longer growing season, yep.
'Cause we're still having 40s and 50s in November.
Yeah, when I left, the morning I left to come here, it was like 35.
It's going to the
Oh.
60s at night right now.
Yeah, but I mean, it warmed back up, so.
You can put it up right in the ground.
Hemlock, which is very interesting, but they're all different varieties. Designed by nature.
Shaggy compared to this. Do you have to take that little end of that, no, go up that branch into that one off because it obscures your?
No, I was just looking at that. I'm probably going to pull the whole thing over a little bit so that it's, yeah, so that this is separated, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's kind of the next thing. The next big thing. So I thought if I kind of move this forward
Okay.
a little bit, and then something with this.
Sort of, a little bit, well, that's that. So not fixed on where the, gem is, but kind of at an angle, so that you're looking up the small branch, and then over to the big branch with the. No, the one that's what he said, it's like so many things. But if you have the other way, you get more of that gin that he works on, is one thing.
Yes, there's no.
All right, now.
You snuck a little bit of windswept thing in there, didn't you?
Snuck? I don't know about snuck, but all right, now. You're reading too much into this. Good. Whoop. All right, what do you guys think of that? The lowest, this thing. Is there a place for that? Get rid of it.
You could bend that down a little bit, couldn't you?
Yeah, well, down and out, I think.
Because toward the back.